Good afternoon and welcome to another webinar in our series, Bear in Mind, Navigating, sorry, wrong title. We have mental wellness in the workplace. We want to thank our sponsors, Kennebunk Savings, Prime Buckles, the Richards Group, and Full Spectrum Wellness. Today's topic is very appropriate for the beginning of the new year. What a way to start the year, igniting joy at work, a workshop for leaders. And our speaker is Heather Gunnell, founder at InLight Leadership Group. Heather Gunnell is on a mission to transform workplace cultures so people can bring their unique genius to the workplace, be fully engaged, and have the energy and time to live a full life outside work. With nearly 20 years in leadership roles, including a leadership role of employee well-being at Dartmouth Health, and having recovered from significant burnout herself, going on to find a way to thrive in life and work, she understands the urgency to create a new work paradigm. Heather is a leadership coach and consultant who has discovered how to lead from the heart, be people-focused, and still kick ass at work. We will include a link to Heather's bio and contact info in our chat. And Heather, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. It's great to be here and see some of you. I see some faces I recognize, which feels great. Hi, Robin. Before I share my slides, I just want to give you a little bit of background on why this topic is so important to me. And I'll share, I spent 20 years in various leadership roles, both in nonprofit work and then in healthcare, many years in clinical operations. So I come to the work of employee well-being and joy at work from the front line, from a place of seeing how difficult work can be and how hard it is sometimes to merge our people focus with our day-to-day operations. And so I'm really passionate about this work because I've seen what happens when we don't do it well. And I've seen how it can change things when we can really engage from like a human-centered lens to leading our people. So thank you for being here. And let me share my screen. And I wanted to share from the get-go that I like to do this in a really engaged way. So I'm going to be asking some questions. I would love it if you'd, take yourself off mute and chime in or type into the chat as we go forward. And don't hesitate to interrupt if you have something to add or a question to ask. And we're going to talk about today various practical ways for us to ignite joy in the workplace. And what I'd like to do with some of this work is we can often read the theory. We can talk about, servant leadership or heart-centered leadership. We can understand these concepts of employee well-being, but we don't always know how to implement them on the floor when you only have a few minutes in your day, particularly if you're a busy leader. So today we're going to go over some of the data around and some of the research that links the power of joy in the workplace with improved business outcomes. I'm going to share a 5-step framework that leaders can start. You could leave here and start working on this afternoon. You could be able to implement a few of these key elements. And then we'll just talk about some action strategies around this. Before we do that, I'm curious, what is it about this topic that interests you? What is it about this topic that people find compelling or interesting?
And again, we welcome you to unmute or type in chat. I saw Robin. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll say what interests me about this is that I feel like I used to be better at it. And I don't know what it is, like if it's been since more remote work or since the pandemic that I've just been like less, I just think about it less and it comes less naturally to me to try to bring joy to the workplace. So that's why it sparked my interest.
That's fantastic. Yeah, thanks for that.
I can pipe in and say that I just don't think we all hear enough about it. And so just the title coming across in my inbox made me smile. And I'm like, yes, this would be a really fun topic to reinforce and just to get in people's minds more. The more we say it, the more we think about it, the more we'll do it. So I loved the focus on it.
Fantastic. I'm always interested what sparks people for this. So let me, so just to talk about, you've probably seen some of this, but and I don't actually think I'm in a room where I have to convince people why they should care about joy in work, but I do think it's really important that we can ground ourselves in some of the research and the data, because oftentimes it's easy to think about employee engagement or well-being or joy as sort of secondary to business outcomes. And so when we can reground ourselves in some of the research, we can understand that it really does have a clear correlation, that the more we improve the employee experience, the more we improve our business outcomes and our customer experience. So I'm just going to talk about these top 4 here. There's a lot of research out there. It's fascinating. You could Google it, and I have done this, spend hours searching. But really understanding the connection to enhanced productivity. So there was an Oxford University research project that showed that happy employees are 13% more productive. Why? It's because when you're feeling joy, then it boosts your innovation, it boosts engagement, and really taps into a sense of purpose, which puts us in a state of flow. So we're more likely to be able to hit a state of flow in our work if we feel happy in what we're doing and we have that sort of emotion. And so there's this research by Martin Seligman, that talks about flow state. And the ability to tap into that. And when we feel happy at work, we can increase our productivity. We also know, especially in this part of the country, it is difficult to hire new people. And when we have a healthy workplace culture and people are feeling happy, then they're more likely to stay. Found this interesting. Gallup's 2023 State of the American Workplace report showed that employees who are not emotionally engaged in their work are 6 times more likely to leave their job. And we all know that the cost of turnover is pretty significant. I think on average, it costs about 1.5 to 2 times the person's salary to replace when we lose somebody. So the importance of retention is really clear. Again, in Deloitte's Global Human Capital Trends 2023 report, 88% of job seekers are now prioritizing company culture. So company culture is as important, if not more important to some people, as salary, which is really, I think, very fascinating to see how things are shifting and how important it is to people that they work somewhere that they feel like they can have a healthy life. This was really interesting. The link between customer service, brand reputation, and employee happiness. The Harvard Business Review showed that happy employees provide 33% better customer service. Which is no surprise. We talk a lot about, when you're on the phone with someone, smile, even if they can't see you, like you can feel that sort of energy from somebody. But 33% better customer service is really significant. And we know that a study in 2015 by Bain and Company showed that just a 1% increase in customer satisfaction can lead to a 3 to 12% increase in revenue. So we can see the links between happy employees, significantly improved customer service, and then the improvement that can have on our bottom line and on our revenue. And no surprise really, but when you have happy employees, the data also shows that it improves creativity and innovation and problem solving, which we could all use more of, I think, right? It makes it so much simpler to get through the day and to do our work when we have some creativity and innovation. And there was a 2016 study that showed that 86% of employees who feel happy in their work are also more creative and more likely to generate creative ideas and collaborate in a different way. So we can see these links, and the reason I highlight some of this is just to really ground us in the science behind joy at work. Sometimes it can feel, like I said, like something that takes a back seat when we get really busy or when things are difficult, but it can really make the rest of our responsibilities easier to navigate. So I'm going to step us back a bit. I'm going to take a bit of a higher view. Has anyone seen this, the PERMA model, this theory of well-being? Does this look familiar to anybody? Whoops, skipped ahead there. This is, again, developed by Martin Seligman, and PERMA it's a broader theory of well-being and happiness. More and more, though, it is being applied within the workplace as a way for us to orient ourselves around what employee well-being and employee joy really entails. So this stands for positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. So the theory says that all of these elements are required in order for us to build a fulfilling life. And there's a good argument to be made that they are also required in order for us to have, feel fulfilled at work. And so there's a few ways that we can use this in our leadership roles to be able to foster more happiness and joy at work. So if we start with the positive emotions, and we bring this into the workplace, we can talk about really just how do we center gratitude in our day-to-day? Do we celebrate successes? I think it's easy for us oftentimes to overlook the power of celebrating even the very small wins in our organizations. We're very good at problem solving and identifying things that need to be improved. And if you've heard this ratio before, for every one negative thing we hear, we need at least 3 positive in order to get back to neutral. And if we want to get beyond neutral, we need 5 positive for every 1 negative. And so if we can start to really weave in celebrating successes and highlighting what goes well into our workplace, we can really foster more of those positive emotions in our teams. Engagement. This, again, comes back to this idea of flow state. So engagement in this model is really about being in that flow state where you're really immersed in the work that you're doing and you feel like you have a challenging and a meaningful task. So something that matters to you, that sort of connects to your values, and also is challenging enough to keep you really focused and keep you involved. So as leaders and in the workplace, some simple ways to start to foster more engagement. It could be as simple as simply providing more autonomy to your people. So that does several things. It certainly builds trust and it shows, I trust you to do this work. But if we can give a bit more autonomy, some more space for people to really dig in and take ownership over something, that can help encourage that engagement. We can also encourage learning and development. If we make sure our people understand that we are invested in their growth and in their learning and really encourage them to learn whatever is interesting to them about the work, then that can also really feed into this engagement. Relationships, I think this will be no surprise. This is around how do we build strong team bonds? How do we foster collaboration and build trust, and the all-important psychological safety, right? Make sure that we create an environment where people feel free to speak up and to point things out, either good or bad, you know, in the workplace, so that everyone's voice is heard and people aren't worried about retaliation or a whisper campaign, right? So it's really this idea of fostering those healthy relationships. And then meaning in the workplace context is really, how does my work as an individual connect to the higher purpose of the organization? So most of our organizations, if not all, will have you know, a value statement. There'll be a mission for the organization, usually some strategic goals. It's important to take those higher level ideas and values and help your employees understand how their specific work day to day impacts the bigger picture, so that they can feel connected to that larger meaning. And finally, accomplishment, again, in the workplace, it's really about, do we have achievable goals that people can meet? We all want to feel like we've accomplished something at the end of the day. It's never fun to get to the end of the day and think, oh, I've been busy, but I have no idea what I did, right? Or what I was able to accomplish at the end of the day. So being able to set achievable goals and then providing real-time feedback and recognition, so that people can see the impact and feel the impact of the work that they're doing every day. So again, this is kind of this bigger picture, the PERMA model, this theory of happiness and well-being, and some ways we can weave this into our workplace culture. How is this landing with people before I move on? As I still scroll through here. Excellent. Okay. So before we dive into some more practical things first, I want to talk about the importance of being the vibe. Now, when I say that, what does this mean to you? This idea of be the vibe. Any takers? We've all heard various versions of vibes don't lie. Yes, I love it. You know, we've all heard various versions of this idea of people won't remember what you say, but they will remember how you make them feel. And regardless of what our role in an organization is, our energy shifts the room, right? So this is even more important if you're in a leadership position, but we set the tone for the people around us. And I want you to come with me on a mental journey for just a moment. I want you to think about somebody that you worked with, or maybe you worked for them, and they were just a bit grumpy all the time. Like, maybe they weren't really outright rude, or they weren't terrible, but they'd sort of tromp down the hall. You could definitely tell if they were having a bad day, sort of show up in the room very distracted, very late, you know, just like somebody who felt very frantic and stressed all of the time. And I want you to remember, think back, how did that impact the team? Whether they were the boss or not, how did that impact you individually? How did that person's energy impact you when you had to be in the room with them? And what was the ripple effect of that, especially if they were in a leadership role? So think on that. And then shift, and now let's think about someone that you've worked with or worked for who just genuinely seemed to be having a good time. You know, they'd smile, they'd make eye contact with you, really ask questions, and you could tell they were really listening. Think about someone who just felt more relaxed, and ask yourself, you know, how did that impact me? How did that shift the dynamic in the room and in the team? We've all had colleagues with different levels of irritation or joy, you know, when they show up in their day. And if we're honest with ourselves, we can recognize the impact that has. And so here's what I need you to do. I want you to very seriously ask yourself, what energy do I bring to the room? On any given day, how am I showing up? Because the way you show up impacts all of the people around you. And so just consider And perhaps ask yourself before your next interaction with somebody, what feeling do I want to be known for? If people don't remember anything I say, but they'll remember how I make them feel, what do I want to be known for in that space? And then keep that front of mind as you interact with people in the workplace. If you do that one thing, it will make a significant difference. But we're going to talk about a few more sort of practical approaches. I see Sarah, your hand is up. Go ahead.
I do have a question with that, because I'm all for that and being joyful, but I also don't want to be fake joy, because people have bad days, and I think you're allowed to have a bad day, and you're allowed to be grumpy, and you're allowed to, because I don't want to tell them they can't be that way. That's who they are that day, and I want them to be that way. So some days I'm going to be that way. So I feel like I'm not sure I'm crossing a line here or not, because I don't want to be fake.
Oh yeah, I would say don't be fake. So I'm going to agree with you, right? That authenticity people can feel. I would never advocate for, toxic positivity or being fake, because people will feel it and something will feel misaligned to them, right? So I would ask you to kind of take yourself in aggregate, right? How do I show up most of the time? And if I'm grumpy, if I've had a really bad day, can I at least own it and tell people, I'm sorry, I'm having a rough day, I might be a little crabby. Or whatever is a comfortable way of framing it for you, that goes a long way. You would be surprised at just how being honest about that can really shift the trust and improve the dynamic. But I agree with you, Sarah. I don't want any of us to be fake in the workplace, as long as we also need to be appropriate. But you know what I mean. That's a different workshop. So does that make sense?
Yeah, there's a lot in
Yes.
the chat, a lot going on.
Oh, there is? Oh,
Yeah.
let me check. Let me open this up. Thank you for calling that out. Yeah, walking on eggshells versus being comfortable and able to be yourself. Yeah, oh, so good. Joy can lead to empathy. You guys are great. This is fun. Yeah, I think patience really does compensate. Thank you for that comment. Patience with ourselves and patience with others. And if we focus on ourselves first, like on the energy we're showing up with, and pay more attention to that before we look at other people, it can make a big difference. And just being able to be transparent about things can go a long way. All right. So I want to share this this framework here that I have, 5 steps for leaders. It was adapted from the IHI, so the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. They have a 4 steps for leaders program, and I've adapted this a bit. And really, we're going to talk in depth just about a couple of these, but I want to go over this framework because what I have found is that any leader at any level of the organization can implement this basically immediately. And if we can really stay focused on our sphere of control and do what we can within our piece of the organization, we can make a significant impact. So I'm going to walk through these for you, and then we'll talk a little bit more in detail about a couple of them. So we start here with this, it's called the What Matters to You conversation. And this is really where we become very deliberate and we talk to our people about what is it they care about in their work. What matters to them in their day-to-day? What is it that what lights them up? What type of projects do they really enjoy doing, right? Like this is a way for us to become more aware of the strengths and the motivations of our people so that we can better include them and then better leverage their strengths. We move from the what matters to you conversation, and often these go together into what's working. So I like this piece of the framework probably the best because it's focused on this appreciative inquiry, positive psychology lens. Most of the time, particularly when we're in leadership positions, we're very good at being focused on What's the problem, or what's not working, or what needs to be tweaked? And sometimes we can forget to ask the question, what's already going well? But if we look at what's already going well, we can understand a lot about our organization, and we can understand a lot of nuance that allows us to better tackle the challenges that we do have. So we want to find out what matters to our people. What do they see that's already working? A great question for this piece is, you know, if everything goes smoothly in your workday, what does that look like? What is it that's working when everything goes well? And once we set up that frame, what do they care about? What's working well? We want to talk to people and just ask, what are the pebbles in your shoe? These are the small things. It's like a, you know, death by 1,000 paper cuts. These are the little things that might seem too little for them to raise a flag, but build up and become really annoying and can create a lot of inefficiency or frustration in the day. Here's the key to the pebbles in your shoe. When you're talking to your people about this, it's important to stay focused on, what do we have control over fixing? It's easy for us to point fingers outside to say, well, if leadership did X, or if this other department did Y, and all of that might be true and impacting the situation. But for this exercise, we need to stay focused on, what do we have control over? So just as a very brief example, you know, I said I worked in clinical operations, and one of these really tiny pebbles, a provider came to me and said, you know, Heather, the printer that I have to use to get patient information, you know, if I want to print them out an article or some information, is all the way down the hall. And I have to leave the patient room and walk X number of steps down the hall and come back. It's inefficient, it's annoying, and it kind of backs us up. It was a pebble that they didn't want to be a bother, so they didn't really bring it up until we introduced this model. So we just moved the equipment, right? So sometimes these pebbles, these things that really build up and annoy people, can be very simple to fix. So that's a very brief explanation of how we can tackle some of these pebbles in the shoe. And then we move into this co-create and commit. So this means that as a team, the whole group crafts some solutions together, and everybody commits to contribute to the solution. So it's a little different. Often we see that a problem is identified and then handed to the person in charge to go fix. Whether that's the supervisor or the leader, we identify a problem and we hand it to somebody to fix it. In this model, we all come together and commit. We all say this situation impacts all of us. So we all commit together to identify a solution and to work on it together. So we start to really minimize finger pointing and blame, because we've all come to this together in a collaborative way. And then we implement it, we test it, and we adapt it. We see, well, did the solution work or not? And we tweak it as we go. And this can be very simple. It doesn't have to be a really large process improvement. But just like, let's see, did it work? And if it didn't, let's try it again. And through all of this, communication is critical. We've probably heard this before. You need to over communicate. So if you feel like you're communicating way too much, you're probably just about right for your team. So we want to be really honest and communicate. I've heard this from you guys. We've all agreed, like, these are the things that are working. Here's what we're testing. Here's what we're doing. Because that level of transparency will build trust, and it will help everyone feel like they're part of that process. We don't want any surprises in this area, right? So you communicate as much as you can, as often as you can. Any thoughts on this before I move on?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
How do you think about that sort of what you just said about communication? Strikes me differently today than it might have a few years back, because I'm managing a hybrid work situation. And so that over communicate seems to be harder to do in a hybrid work setting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what have you tried?
I would like some solutions here. No.
Yeah, I'd be happy to give you some. I mean,
No, I mean, we've tried
hybrid.
a lot of, we're doing some fun things, having, just, obviously we're using technology of Teams and Chatter and that kind of stuff, but, oftentimes we have regular one-on-ones, but also pop in and, trying to understand. We've had really as a team direct conversations about what kind of communications you most like and appreciate, and then trying to adapt. So we've tried a lot of different things. And I don't think it's going badly. I feel like it's harder for me in a hybrid than it was. I think that communications is one of the things that I have focused on and as a leader, and it's starting to learn it over again in a way.
Yeah, I mean, hybrid is definitely more difficult, and having managed hybrid teams as well, I can feel, I can feel that pain. And I would say you're doing a lot of the right things, right? Asking people how they want to communicate, and what is the best venue is certainly the right place to start. When we're looking at hybrid teams, some key things that, I mean, this is a whole other conversation in itself, but I would just highlight, right? Like, the importance of having regular check-ins, whether that's as a team, sounds like you're doing that, whether you get together in person once a quarter or once a month or whatever that is. And then a variety of ways to communicate, right? We don't want people to feel like they're drowning in email. So some methods that I've seen that are really good are like a video update, that people can see a short 2-minute video on something. Various Slack channels or chat options, basically a variety of ways for people who learn and retain information in different ways to be able to get the information. There's a lot more about hybrid communication that obviously we could go into, but you're doing the right things by asking what's working. And so I would ask that question, what's working here right now? And then build from there. I know that's very brief, but I hope it's a little bit helpful. Yeah.
It's a good time to point out that we have a March webinar on building culture in a hybrid environment. So I'll put the link in chat.
That's perfect.
That's
great.
Well, she provided the segue, so.
that was perfect. So I'm going to go into more detail on these what matters to you conversation, because this is really the foundation of building joy in work and building happiness. And like I said, when I think about building joy in work, I think about it as how do we integrate this into our day-to-day work? So it's not just benefits, or it's not just a wellness program or the pizza party we do every 6 weeks. Those are great things to do, but in my view, that's not what really moves the needle on happiness in work, because people spend 8 to 10 plus hours a day doing their day-to-day work, and so that's where we need to get to when we want to really impact the joy of our employees. And this is how we start it, right? So this what matters to you conversation is the beginning. So when we have these conversations, I would start by saying one of the best places to do this is when you have regular employee reviews. So if you do a quarterly check-in with your people, you don't really want to wait till the end of year annual review if you can help it. But if you have regular weekly or bi-weekly meetings with your people, make sure to have this conversation every third or fourth one, variations of it, right? Make it a part of the conversation. It's great to do in one-on-one. It's also really effective in a team. If you have a smaller team and you're doing team meetings, this can be a really effective way to get some brainstorming and collaboration going. So we start by just setting the intention, being very transparent. In our conversation today, I really just want to understand, what matters to you about your job? What are you interested in? Because this sets the tone that we're here to listen to you and to better understand. And it allows the person the space to start to open up and be willing to, to be a little more talkative perhaps than they would normally be, right? It's not just about here's your bullet points to get through today, but I really want to better understand. And so when we start this, we also want to really ask questions, really open-ended questions, and then follow where that takes us. So the best question to start with is just this one: what matters to you? Right? What is it about your job that gets you excited? What type of projects are really fun for you to work on? Right? These type of questions that start to just solicit from the person, what are their thoughts? What really lights them up? Because if we can allow people to work on things that they are excited about, even if it's just an ad hoc project here and there, something that they really enjoy, it will absolutely boost those feelings of excitement and engagement and joy in their work. Another question that I really like to ask people is, what are your strengths? Like, what do you feel are your strengths? And then follow that up with, do you get to use them in your current role? The current projects that you're working on, do you feel like you get to really leverage your strengths? Because then you can understand if people start to say no to that and they don't feel like they can use their strengths, you may be able to get ahead of someone starting to get a little disenfranchised with their job, right? So if we can ask those questions and figure out ways to start to weave that in to the workplace, it's a really powerful way of improving joy with our people. And then we want to make sure we're really listening. So we want to pay close attention. We want to ask clarifying questions. I know you all do this, right? But it just bears repeating, because sometimes we get busy or we have our list of questions and we forget to really pay attention. But we want to just lean in to the conversation and really listen to what that person is telling us, because we will start to understand, what do they really care about? And the benefits of this conversation, it leads to, like I said, a deeper understanding of our people. It increases the engagement of the team, and it really improves collaboration, particularly if you try this in a team setting where you collectively talk to people, or you have individual meetings and come back to the team and say, here's some of the commonalities. Here's what I learned. You'll usually find themes in your people. It really builds trust and fosters, psychological safety, so that people are more willing to be creative and collaborative and bring their unique genius into the workplace, right? It's a really fun way to get started. And it goes a long way in shifting that culture in a positive way. So, I want to ask, how many of you currently do something like this, something similar to this, or have in the past? And what was the impact of it if you did? All right, well, if you think of it, pop in the chat here. Oh, here's something. Strength finders, yeah, and discussions as a team. There's something really powerful about asking people, what do you really good at? What are your strengths, right? We don't often jump to talking about what we're really good at. And it's a great way to learn more about the people that you work with. So the other piece of this 5-step process that I want to, let me check the time here, that I want to talk more about is the piece of co-creating and co-committing to the results. So when we do this, we want to start with this idea of the question of, what's already working. So whenever we come to the table with a challenge, we all do a lot of problem solving in our roles. There's always something that needs fixed, right? That we're in charge of fixing. And that's good. And we need to be really honest about that. Like we were talking earlier, we don't want to pretend like there's no problems or there's no challenges. We don't want that toxic positivity. What we do want, though, is to say, okay, we recognize that there is a situation or a challenge or a project, and we need to come up with a solution. But let's start by asking what's already working. What's in this space that's already working? What are the strengths that we have in the team, whether it's the skill set or the resources we have or the trust? Like, what are the strengths that we currently have that we can leverage? Because if we start with this idea and this, joint understanding of what's already awesome, it makes it a whole lot easier to keep the momentum to be able to move forward. So we start with what's good. And then we ask the question, okay, so what's possible, right? If we stay stuck in the idea of the problem, it can get kind of heavy, and we move ourselves out of a creative way of thinking. But if we ask ourselves, what's the ideal, what's possible, we can really have a brainstorming session with people and throw out ideas that allow us to say, okay, here's our ideal. Let's reverse engineer our way so that we can get from here to there more efficiently and having more fun, frankly. I think we could all use a little bit more fun in some of that work. And then we commit together. So I said earlier, and I will reiterate, that this becomes a joint process. We don't hand it over to the supervisor or the leader. We don't hand it over to someone and say, okay, you figure it out and come back and tell us what to do. We do this together. We all say, okay, we are all impacted by this. We identified the solution together, and we're going to try it together. We're going to implement this. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do, right? It becomes a joint process. It's a really great way of building trust and having more fun. And it reduces, as I said, some of the friction in change management. When we pull it away from so-and-so told me I had to, and we move it into we all decided together, people are more willing to take the steps they need to make some of those changes. How does that resonate with people? See what's in the chat here.
Heather, I'm just curious, if you're a team and you're working on these problems and solving them, and there's one person, for example, that's an obstacle and refuses to cooperate, or how do you handle someone that is not willing to work with you or something?
Yeah, it's a great question. The way I like to do it is coming from a place of empathy and curiosity. So what I would do is I'd sit down with that person one-to-one and perhaps say something like, I want to see if everything's okay with you, because I have noticed X, Y, Z. And so I just wonder what's going on, what's behind that, right? So that's one way of doing it. Another way, I coached one leader who was having a similar challenge, but with someone who was an informal leader. So the team looked to this person really as a role model, but this person could be really negative. And so what this leader did, what we coached her through, was just to say, in a meeting, instead of pointing out the negativity, just say, the team really looks up to you, and they really respect your career and your style. And I wonder if you'd be willing to partner with me as we work to shift this team culture to be more positive. Would you be willing to partner with me? Right. So it wasn't pointing out the negativity of this person, but it was acknowledging that informal power that she had and bringing them along. So those are a couple of different ways that I would probably choose to handle that.
Daniela, that's interesting in chat. It's critical to see the resistor as a wisdom teller, engage what they are seeing that we are missing. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't make them the adversary. Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to just leave you with a couple of these quick wins and takeaways. So we talked about this framework. There's obviously, you know, a lot that we can do in this space, but 3 key things that I want you to walk away with that I actually think you could start doing immediately. 1, you got to be the vibe. You have to be the vibe that you want to see in your team. Whether you're the person in charge or not, take a moment, take a deep breath, check in with yourself before you enter the room, virtual or otherwise. And be honest with yourself about the tone that you bring, and be a little bit more deliberate today, and a little more deliberate tomorrow about the energy that you bring with you into the work and into all of your conversations. Take away the what matters to you conversation. So just asking people questions like, what really worked today? What is it that you really care? What do you love the most about your job, right? You could start doing this to people in the break room if you wanted to. I mean, you can start this immediately. It does not have to be a big planned process to just start practicing, inviting more of those open-ended conversations into the workplace. And then we want to co-create and implement this. So again, very simple tactical ways that we can do this. You can simply add to your meeting agendas at either the beginning or the end, what's working today? What's going well, or what's been going well this week, right? Just add it into any meeting you already have. It takes 30 seconds. Maybe no one will say anything, and that's okay, because it's just starting the process of helping people understand. We're just going to shift the dynamic a little bit. We're going to shift the conversation to some more positive elements in our work. I would also invite you to consider, if you have regular standing meetings or sessions where you have a standing agenda and the PowerPoints, go through with a critical eye and look at what's on the agenda, what's in the PowerPoint. Normally, it's going to be our financials, our metrics, you know, the KPIs, probably some HR type stuff. And ask yourself, what can I add to the agenda that becomes a standing agenda item that speaks to bringing joy in the workplace? Because people know what isn't important to an organization based on what's on the agenda in all our important meetings. And so just to send the message that this is now an element of importance to us, and it becomes a standing part of the agenda, can go a long way in shifting that culture and sending a very clear message to people that this is something we care about, and this is something we are very focused on. What do people think about that? I'm curious, is there anything that you are thinking, you know what, I can leave here today and do X? What are people willing to walk out of here today and try?
Alexandra has a comment in chat. I do appreciate the co-commitment idea, as I know a lot of leaders often get overwhelmed with decision making. I've dealt with a lot of decision fatigue myself, and I would imagine this helps quite a lot.
Yeah, thank you for that. Not only being overwhelmed with decision making, but I might add to that, from my experience at least, the responsibility, right? Feeling responsible for solving all of the problems. We don't have to do that. We have very smart people on our teams, really creative people that we work with, and being able to expand who we listen to and who we allow to participate in the solutions can be helpful for our own stress level. Robin, this is great. My team has done what went well and why every Friday for 6 months. This is great. How is that going for the team?
I would say it was really hard at first. We would always start out being like, I don't think anything went well this week.
Yeah.
So we're getting better at it. And I think the why is also challenging because I don't know if people are just being humble, but they often attribute something, the reason that it went well, like something outside of their control or just something random happened. But I try to remind them, like, well, they did something to make it go well. There was something about their approach or them that was part of the reason that it went well.
That is, yes, that's perfect. I'm so excited to hear that. I love it when people do that, because what you said, I think that is so critical, is what did they contribute to make it go well? That's fantastic. Yeah. Anybody else? I'm going to stop sharing to see if I can see what people are saying. What else is anyone else willing to say what they're taking away from this today?
You're more inclined to
Lisa.
share on chat.
Yeah, that's okay. I can read.
Well, I love the idea of turning the conversation to the positive by asking what is working. It is easy for the meeting to devolve into negativity because of things outside of our control. And then Nisa said, we have a mission moment that really helps bring people together. We have a member share a brief story, or even something simple like how to ID a bird or a plant. We're an environmental organization, and it helps ground us in why we do the work.
So important. I like that mission moment. You know, there's a lot of research and evidence out there that says bringing any sort of mindfulness into the workplace can make a big difference. I know some teams who will start their meetings with just 30 seconds of breathing, right? So depends on your workplace culture, whether or not that would be something that would resonate with people. But even this mission moment, right? What a beautiful way to reconnect people to the why of their work. Daniela, I like that you are the vibe and you need to be intentional about how you show up. Yeah, it's the first step. Absolutely the first step. Yeah. Any other questions or feedback, ideas on this?
Please feel free to unmute and ask your questions. This is your chance.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you. This is my first time joining one of these. I'm newer in a larger manufacturing workplace, and so coming out of quality and compliance, my role has a lot of conflict just by nature, and just hearing your talking points today and just what everybody's contributed has been supportive. So thank you.
That's fantastic. I'm glad you were able to be here. Well, this was fun. Thank you for participating, and thanks for having me here today. This is probably my top favorite topic that I get to speak on. So I appreciate that you let me be here today.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and expertise. Our next webinar coming up, before I leave you, I want to let you know that next week we are addressing loneliness in the workplace with Janice Schulin from the Schulin Group, and that is January 17th at noon, and we'll put the link in chat. I know someone mentioned this is a great series to start the year on the right path, and someone mentioned the cultures in remote workplaces. I put that link in the chat. We also have it available on our website, so feel free to register for any of those, and invite your colleagues to do so as well. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to address this topic. Thank you, Heather. And I'll see you all in an upcoming webinar. Thank you.